Haribol, Namaste. Welcome to the Yoga Wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita class tonight. My name is Janapati Das. Thank you so much. Please accept my most humble respects. Thank you for coming to the class tonight and listening to our wonderful Bhagavad Gita as it is, as translated by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I'd like to take this opportunity to offer my most humble obeisances unto my spiritual teacher, Jagat Guru Siddha Swarupananda, Srila Prabhupada, Paramhamsa Srila Prabhupada, and my spiritual grandfather and the translator, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And thank you so much for coming tonight. Let's start off our class tonight with some, as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has, in this day and age of quarrel, chaos, and confusion, instructed us to chant the holy names of Krishna as the San Kirtan Yajna, the Kirtan, the sacrifice of this day and age to practice, to attain self-realization and understanding of basically the message of the Bhagavad Gita and what we're going to talk about tonight. So please join along if you haven't done this before. Kirtan is the chanting of mantras. Mantras comes from two Sanskrit words, man, which means the mind, and tra, which means to draw away. So the mantra is a spiritual sound vibration. It is non-different than Krishna. It is non-different than the spiritual world. It is not the same as a mundane sound vibration like peanut butter or George Bush or whatever you might say, dog training, things like that. You say those things over and over, even if they're a nice word like rainbow. It does not really help us. But when we chant the names of Krishna, the mantras, we can feel the peace and happiness and attain tranquility of mind and understanding in our heart of why we're here and what the purpose of our life is. So in this practice of Kirtan, I will lead with the Kirtan. You can take that moment just to let the sound wash over you into your heart and rest into it. And the second time through, you can sing back with me. So let's do that. Do a couple mantras here. One to praise my spiritual teacher, and also to give respectful obeisances to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the initiator of this practice of Kirtan, and his associates, Lord Nityananda and Lord Sri Adwaita and Gandhar and Sri Vas and all the other devotees of Lord Chaitanya. And so follow along, please. Namo Siddha Swarupananda, Paramamsa Namine, Gola Karuna Swarupaya, Radha Krishna Pristaya, Namo Siddha Swarupananda, Paramamsa Namine, Gaura Karuna Swarupaya, Radha Krishna Pristaya, Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Adwaita Gadadhara, Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Haribo. Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Haribo. Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Haribo. Krishna, Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So, we are reading from the Bhagavad Gita as it is. And the Bhagavad Gita as it is entitled as it is. The translation of the Vedic scripture is Bhagavad Gita. But Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, my spiritual grandfather, translated and purported upon the Bhagavad Gita and entitled it as it is because he was seeing that many people were missing the point of the Bhagavad Gita, which we're going to talk about tonight. They were translating it with their own personal desires and whims and their own opinions, the translators, or the own opinions, instead of the opinion of Bhagavan. Then Bhagavan is translated as God, as Krishna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is a song of God, and therefore we should be giving not just our own opinions as if we were somehow the supreme controller and supreme enjoyer. And this is a theme that is actually laid out in the Bhagavad Gita itself, and that so many people miss the point by translating it and purporting upon it and for their own whims and their own, and some completely way off base philosophies about Bhagavad Gita. So the Song of God is a conversation between the Supreme Personality of God, Bhagavan, Sri Krishna, and his dear disciple, Arjuna, on a battlefield of all places, before a massive battle that will exterminate millions and millions of people. Millions and millions of people in this. And like most things, this is set at a dilemma. There is a question, not just a question, but many questions in the mind of the disciple or the student, the warrior, prince, Arjuna, that is being presented to Krishna. And why is this such an important thing? And this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about this Bhagavad Gita and the meaning of the Bhagavad Gita by reading some of the verses. Of course, to really, it's impossible to just put a cap on the Bhagavad Gita and say this is what it's about, and without really understanding that the Bhagavad Gita is ever giving fresh, and you read some things, mundane novels and literature, and you read it a couple times and it gets old, but the Bhagavad Gita is a living scripture, that therefore it is constantly applicable and relevant in this day and age of 2025 of AI and internet and cell phones and modern craziness and upheavals and whatnot, as it was 5,000 years ago when it was spoken by Krishna to Arjuna. And so we are going to talk about the message. Arjuna had a dilemma, and we all have dilemmas as spirit souls in this material world. We constantly have dilemmas, and in order to focus on the solution of the problems of our life, we need to go to an authority. Krishna is an authority, but not only just Krishna, but the representative of Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita itself, chapter 4, verse 34, Krishna tells Arjuna, just try to understand this truth by approaching a spiritual master, an authority figure, a sober representative of me, to understand this truth. You should render loving service to this spiritual master, the self-realized soul, who is a representative of Krishna. And he can impart this knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. And also, as we will read in some of these verses today, the recipient, as Arjuna was, is not envious of Krishna. He doesn't want to be Krishna, like these so-called translators and whatnot are envious of Krishna because they want to be the enjoyer, and therefore they give the wrong purport upon this. One cannot actually understand the absolute truth without approaching the spiritual master in a humble state of mind, and render service to this spiritual master, and then the spiritual master can impart the knowledge because he has seen the truth by applying the same process with his spiritual master, surrendering to the spiritual master and receiving knowledge accordingly. And that is the process of the descending process of knowledge, of receiving spiritual knowledge in the Bhakti Yoga process. It's a way that's been handed down from student to teacher to student, all the way back to Krishna. And Krishna here is representing this as a spiritual master to Arjuna, to impart this knowledge to his devotee and his friend, Krishna. So it is about also not just imparting, but also receiving, how you receive absolute truth and how you receive wisdom. You know, how you, if you are recipient of it, your heart is open and you can understand the truth. Right? For as Jesus Christ, great devotee of Krishna, also great devotee of God, said, just try to learn the truth. Oh no, sorry. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Right? So let's get into. So we're going to read. This is, of course, our Bhagavad Gita as it is. It's this 1972 translation. That's the recommended. There are other editions, but the 1972 edition is very nice. It has Sanskrit. It has the transliteration and word for word, transliteration definitions of the words, and the translation of the whole verse, and the purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta. So it's a very, very wonderful book. So if you haven't gotten a copy, I recommend getting this. Don't just read any Bhagavad Gita. You can get way off the mark by reading so many of the Bhagavad Gita translations out there. But read the one by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So we are reading a chapter. In chapter 9, this conversation is going on, and Krishna is unveiling this. Arjuna has a dilemma of trying to fight in this battle, and there's in chapter 1 a series of rules and regulations from the Vedic system that Arjuna makes points of that are very valid in why they're set up in the Vedic civilization, where it was originally a dharma system to guide society in a spiritual and religious way that they can enjoy. If you had some sense gratification desires and things that you wanted to enjoy in the material world, you could still be regulated in a way that you would be able to enjoy and also be elevated. So these rules and regulations were set up. You can see these originally in other religions, such as the Quran, the Torah. In the Bible had the people in Moses' time had rules and regulations to because they were basically had no spiritual life. So God gave them a whole bunch of rules and regulations to follow to be able to live in things you could sacrifice and offer and whatnot, and still be living in a way that would elevate you spiritually, that would help you come to understand your relationship with God. And this is being thrown out completely into modern day society. So there are no really rules and regulations about how people should act spiritually. It's just sort of like whatever you feels good, whatever you want to do, whatever perversions you want to, sense gratifications that you want to engage in. There's no real interest in spiritual life at all. In fact, a lot of these things are seen as kind of quasi-spiritual by the sort of New Age so-called religions and whatnot. So this is, Krishna actually starts to unveil, takes Arjuna's concern and his argument for it, and he starts to basically take it apart and show him a deeper truth about the identity of the living entity as being a spiritual entity and not the material body, which is brought up in chapter 2, and explaining that all the people on the battlefield that Arjuna was concerned about the killing were not actually being killed after all. Their bodies were being killed, but spiritually you continue. So there is a living entity, and that living entity is subordinate to the supreme soul, or to Krishna. So everyone is a spark of God, a spiritual spark, but a minutely small and subservient to the will of Krishna, and that we have a role, we have a role to what we should do, and that is to be in a loving engagement with Krishna. So however this is brought about eventually in societies that have religion like the Quran or the Torah, this was brought out through different rules and regulations, but they all kind of come to the same point. So Krishna's point was in the chapter 18, he brings this up, just abandon all of these varieties of religion that you're bringing up, the rules and regulations, and just surrender unto me, because that's where you're going anyway. So this chapter 9 is called the most confidential knowledge, right? Chapter 9, verse 1. The Supreme Lord said, "My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most secret wisdom, knowing which you shall be relieved of all of the miseries of material existence." And so this class is called the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. So true wisdom is understanding these inner intricacies and the relationship to a higher truth, right? And how you can apply that in your life. And this is what Krishna is imparting to Arjuna, and what we had brought about. How does one receive this spiritual knowledge? I mean, it's there. They call it the, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada used to call this, Bhakti Yoga as the open secret. And why was it an open secret? Because it's out there for everyone to know, but not everybody is, privy to it, to this wisdom. They want to kind of do their own thing. So the secret wisdom, just surrender to Krishna and engage in this loving relationship with Krishna. That is your eternal relationship anyway. You have gone away from that. You have decided you have your own agenda as being the supreme controller in your own mind. So he says, 1, you're not envious of me. Envy is the one thing that it is a burning desire to own and control. And so it goes with this idea in the Bhagavad Gita of lust. And lust is a perverted reflection of transcendental love. We have a transcendental loving relationship with God and with all living entities, but in the process of being in the contact with material energy, we have been our consciousness has been perverted with different desires to be the controller, to be the enjoyer instead of being the enjoyed, or to be the controlled. And this is the wisdom that Krishna wants to impart to Arjuna, because Arjuna is not, I guess he has a little bit of enviousness in the beginning, but that's under Krishna's arrangement. But he is presenting this question as a disciple would to the spiritual master in a humble state of mind. I don't know what to do. I don't know which way to go. Please instruct me. I am, as Arjuna says, I am a soul surrendered unto you. Just, please instruct me about which way I should go. That is a lot different than, I don't need that. I know best, do you know who I am? I'm Mr. So-and-so. I'm the head of this school, or I'm the head of this organization, or I'm the president of this country, or I'm the, this person or this rock star, and I know better. Look how many people love me. I'm awesome. I don't need you to tell me what to do. That's that envious attitude, right? And he's saying here, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. One of the great miseries is ignorance. The ignorant thing is thinking, I am this person. I am this, body. I am white, black, gay, straight, tall, short, Republican, Democrat. All these things that come with the designation of our body that we're born in, and the pigment color of our skin, and the sex of our body. They all come with all kinds of misconceptions. But Arjuna is told early on in the Bhagavad Gita that this is not who this is the greatest illusion that humanity has, is thinking that every living entity has in this material world, that I am this, I am that, I am everything that has to do with this body, and everything that goes on in my mind, whatever desires I have, that's me. But Krishna is saying that isn't you. Those are coverings of you, and you are actually an illusion. And that's actually not only just an illusion, it's also a misery of material existence, because everything that comes with the body comes disappointment and frustration and lamentation and fear and anger. All the things that people are going through right now, either in a political scene or in personal scenes and relationships, you hear it all the time. Even today, I heard a colleague of mine was talking about his relationship and how this person didn't do that, and this person acts this way and I act this way, and it's all the greatest illusion, because those kinds of things are only temporary. They're temporary, and they don't define who you really are. And this is the wisdom that Krishna is teaching you, that there is a different way. There is a reality of existence, the eternal reality of who you really are. This sort of stopover in this lifetime is just a temporary flash in the pan, and it comes with all kinds of material miseries, and how much real enjoyment do you have in this world? Do you really actually are spending trying to alleviate painful situations, like, that was a good sleep. No, it's really because your body was just tired and you relieved that tired. Or I just drank a really nice drink of something. Well, that was actually because you were thirsty, and So most of the things, as my dear God brother Jivan Krishnadas would always say, is 99.9% of things are just actually either boredom of the mundane existence of material life, or you're actually trying to alleviate the suffering. Somehow you want to try to get it, and you have a little bit of, you have some good things that happen, right? You have good things and you have bad things. And as my spiritual master would say, as life is mostly taught on the playground of the seesaw, sometimes you're up and sometimes you're down in the material world. You go up and you're like, whoa, I'm up. And then you start to come down and like, oh no, I'm going down. I'm at the bottom. And I'm going up. And you go down and up and down. And he said, the way to alleviate those kinds of anxiety is to be equiposed in the ups and downs of material existence. Always think of Krishna. Always chant Krishna's names. Take shelter of your spiritual master. Take shelter of Krishna in the good times. Take shelter in Krishna in the bad times. Chant Krishna's names always. And you will be able to just surrender to Krishna, as Krishna says. And he will give you all protection from the suffering, from sinful reactions. You will be able to deal with the things that go on, up and down in your life. And you have to deal with leaving this material world, which is a really big thing if you're not prepared for it. So, he says, that's what he says. And in text 2, he says, this knowledge is the king of education, Raja Vidya. Raja, you've heard Raja is like the great kings of the Maharajas, the great emperors of the Vedic civilization, great saintly kings. It is the king of education. All educations that we learn, and even the Vedic civilization had really amazing philosophies and different things, but this knowledge of Bhakti Yoga, the Bhagavad Gita, the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, of your eternal loving relationship with Krishna, is the king of education. So we have so much education and so much so-called knowledge in this material world. The internet age, my age, as a Generation X, we used to go to the library and get the reel-to-reel, or we find the books in the thing. And even then, there was a lot of information in the library. But now you can just, I want to know something, chat GPT, tell me what it's like, woo, there it is. It's all this knowledge. But what is it really, what is the benefit of so much of this knowledge? It may tell you a lot about the material world, but it doesn't tell you about beyond the material world. It doesn't tell you about your spiritual relationship with Krishna. You can study your whole life about this beetle in Chile that mates with different beetles, and you can know all the kinds of patterns, the mating patterns, and the whatnots, and everything like that. You could spend your whole life writing papers and stuff like that, but how does that help you, really, in the long run? How does that really help you? It doesn't. It doesn't help you at all. So this knowledge of Krishna that your spiritual master imparts into you, the non-envious person, it's the most secret of all secrets. Because, like Bhaktivedanta said, it's an open secret. It's there for you to know. It is the purest knowledge. Because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. It is the perfection of religion. So it is the highest meaning of religion too. All these rules and regulations that Arjuna was trying to, the religious principles and whatnot, they all kind of like had certain means and stuff like that. But what did they point to? They point to this knowledge, this king of education, this understanding of your relationship with Krishna. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. Yay, yay, yay. Who loves Kirtan? I do. But Kirtan is the king of all education. It's non-different than Krishna or Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya brought this king of knowledge in the form of Kirtan, which gives direct perception of the self by realization, and is the perfection of religion. It is non-different. So we'll read some of the Bhaktivedanta's purports, and I'll just shut up talking about this. This chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called the King of Education because it is the essence of all doctrines and philosophies explained before. There are 7 principal philosophers in India: Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Yajnavalkya, Shandila, Vaishvanara, and finally Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedanta Sutra, who is also the author of the Srimad Bhagavatam. If you haven't read that, that's also amazing. Bhaktivedanta has also done a wonderful job of purporting and translating that. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, I recommend you read that as well. Now the Lord says that so there is no dearth of knowledge in this field of philosophy or transcendental knowledge. Now the Lord says that this 9th chapter is the king of all such knowledge, the essence of all knowledge that can be derived from the study of the Vedas and different kinds of philosophy. So here Arjuna had a really keen understanding of Vedic knowledge of the Vedas. Everybody did back in those days. Nowadays in Kali Yuga, in this age, people can't even remember. I mean, what did you do a week ago? It's like you can't even remember. Like what was I saying? What was I talking about? You read something and then somebody's like saying, no, that wasn't how it was. It's like, we don't know where our car keys are. We misplace stuff all the time. It's like, we're completely lost in this age. So, but people they knew everything about the Vedas and philosophies. But here, Bhaktivedanta is saying that this is the essence of all that knowledge. All the Vedas pointed to this was the cream of all knowledge, right? It is the most confidential because confidential or transcendental knowledge, understanding the difference between the soul and the body, and the king of all confidential knowledges culminates in devotional service. So here Arjuna is being taught earlier on that you're not your body and you're not your mind, but that ultimately you are a spirit soul. You are a subservient soul to and you will always be a servant in a servant position. Even if you reject Krishna, you will be a servant of the material energy, which is a servant of Krishna. So you're indirectly still serving Krishna, just more of a bummer. Material life is much more of a bummer to try to serve. And in devotional service. So devotional service is the real confidential knowledge, is in this relationship of you and Krishna, and you and your spiritual master, the representative of Krishna. Generally, people are not educated in this confidential knowledge. They are educated in external knowledge. As far as ordinary education is concerned, people are involved with so many departments: politics, sociology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, astronomy, engineering, etc. There are so many departments of knowledge all over the world and many huge universities, but there is unfortunately no university or educational institution where science or the spirit soul is instructed. Yet the soul is the most important part of this body. Without the presence of the soul, the body has no value. So they have not, in science, been able to identify where consciousness comes from. They try to locate different parts in the body, and they notice it's coming from the heart, but energy coming from the heart, but they haven't made this connection, because this separation of spiritual knowledge, science, and material science is too radical for people they just can't understand it, because they can't wrap their mind around it, which is why it's a spiritual science, because spirit is nothing to do with matter. And you have politics, sociology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, all these things, they are important as a subservient greater understanding of understanding bhakti yoga. If you understand bhakti yoga as the pinnacle, then all these other sciences can be applicable in your argument. But it can't be the other way around, because people just, most of the time in science, speculate about what they've discovered. And a lot of times, 100 years down the line, a bunch of scientists will contradict what the scientist from 100 years speculated about. So this is the way of material science. It studies the world. It may have a pretty good understanding of the world, but it has no entry into what happens after death, what happens, if there is a God, is there a spiritual world, is there something beyond? There's only, you can only look to the material world and see things like consciousness and the reversal of thermodynamic laws, and say, well, science can't really explain that. But if I knew that the presence of the living entity within the body is illuminating the body and making it appear as if it's lifelike through consciousness, well, then that all makes sense. But otherwise, they don't. There are so many, but, once again, many scientists will not accept this because they are envious. They want to be right with their own so-called wealth of knowledge. But without the knowledge, this king of education, without this knowledge of bhakti yoga, your knowledge is really petty, and a lot of times way off the mark. And they just think these are the so-called learned people of the material world. They're not very learned at all. There are so many departments of knowledge all over the world and many huge universities. Okay, so I read that. Yet the soul is the most important part of this body. Without the presence of the soul, the body has no value. It doesn't. When the soul leaves, the body completely, the thermodynamics kicks in. It's like gunk. It falls apart. And all the other living entities in other bodies take over and eat it. That still, people are placing great stress on the bodily necessities of life, not caring for the vital soul. So my spiritual master has made this comparison that body is like the bird cage, and the bird is the soul. And you have this situation where we spend so much time, like we put our diamonds on our bird cage, we paint it really nice paints and sparkly paints, we change the metal, and we don't feed the bird. We don't have anything in this life, in universities or anything, to explain how do we feed our soul. How do we feed ourselves? Really spiritually. How do we give ourselves spiritual food? They don't have any way. They have many ways to manipulate material energy to try to make the bird cage really, really, nice and healthy and, strong and whatnot for at least a time being. But this is the process of Bhakti Yoga, the process of chanting Kirtan, the ways that the spiritual master instructs you. This is how you feed your bird. This is how you make your bird healthy. This is how the bird will sing, And you can take care of your bird cage and make sure there's a good bird cage while the bird is in the bird cage. You gotta make sure it's healthy and take care of it. But in relationship to the bird, you don't just do a bird cage so you can have a nice bird cage, and then one day have to sell it on Facebook Marketplace or something. That's it's like, so people not caring about our spiritual life, and at the time of death, when your bird cage is crapping out, then what? You're freaking out. You're thinking, oh, I'm dying. Just like Arjuna was talking with these people. I'm going to kill them, and that's it. I'm killing these people. So my spiritual master, Jagadguru, has made this difference between, he has a lecture where he talks about the difference between being compassionate and lamenting for the dead. So the compassionate part is understanding, who these people are. They're spirit souls. They need the knowledge. They need the king of education. They need this knowledge about that they're not going to die. Instead of lamenting, oh, please don't go, I can't live without you. It's like that poor guy's dying on the bed, and all his family members are throwing themselves on the bed. And I had this personal experience with my father, and fortunately, I was very fortunate to come into contact with my spiritual master, who instructed me on this king of education. So I have some, inkling of knowledge that I could do and help my father transition and not be fearful when he was leaving, and ensuring him that he was continuing. And fortunately, he was wise enough to know that that was the truth. So this is a great way. This is a great service that people can do for those that they love, who are fearful of this death and not taking their spiritual life serious throughout their life to prepare themselves for this. Because everybody thinks maybe I'll live to 80 or 85, but that's not necessarily true. People can die anytime. There's no case of having a lease on life or whatever. Continuing, the Bhagavad Gita, especially from the second chapter on, stresses the importance of the soul. In the very beginning, the Lord says that this body is perishable and that the soul is not perishable. So Krishna makes that point, the difference between the two. The spirit soul is eternal, ever existing. It's not slain when the body is slain. It's not withered by wind or burnt by fire, whereas the soul, or the body, is beat up pretty bad. It's like for all life we get kicked around. That is a confidential part of knowledge. Simply knowing that the spirit soul is different from this body and that its nature is immutable, indestructible, and eternal. But that gives no positive information about the soul. But it's a start, it's a start to explain that you're not your body. I mean, that's pretty radical. 95% of people out there think that they're a body. They think that they're black or white or Hispanic or woman or man, and they're fighting over that. They think they're gay or straight or trans or tall or short or old or young or this profession or that profession. All these things that are designation of the body, that's not who they are. It has no basis in reality. To educate people, to give people that piece of the king of education, to say, just chant Krishna's names and learn that you are not, this is not you. This is not you. This is a temporary stayover, but it's not who you really are eternally. That's a radical thing. I mean, sometimes people really, I mean, the first time I heard it, it was amazing. I just was like really blown away by how deep that was. And now you kind of think about that, but it's such a radical thing to tell people. But it's amazing because it gives you a perception of understanding that if you are eternal and you're not your body, when the body dies, like Krishna is telling Arjuna, when these people are killed on the battlefield, they are continuing on. They're not stopping. They're not ending. That's not it. You know, they continue on into maybe other forms of life forms, or if they're fortunate enough to practice spiritual life, they can go back to Krishna. But so sometimes people are under the impression that the soul is different from the body, and that when this body is finished, one is liberated from the body, the soul remains in the void and becomes impersonal. But actually that is not a fact. How can the soul, which is so active within this body, be inactive after liberation from the body? It is always active. So the soul is active. It's an active, living, eternal living entity. You're eternally the same spirit soul. It's not like you merge into a nothingness like Buddhism, you know, or you there's really nothing there. I mean, this was one scientist, Francis Crick, the father of DNA, they call him. He discovered discovered the DNA. He did a study to try to find out where the self was, that he couldn't find it anywhere in the body, and so, which is true. It's not part of the body. You know, it is existing within the body, but it is not the same as the body. So he concluded that because there was no visible place of where the self was, there must not be any self. So therefore we don't really exist. And he wrote a book. He wrote a book to all the people that don't exist, and he didn't exist, and the book really didn't exist because he didn't exist and he couldn't have written it. And he explained about why we don't exist. So you know, ultimately you have to come to a point where material knowledge ends and spiritual knowledge takes over. That there are two forms of energy. There are material energy and there's spiritual energy. So, this purport is really chapter 9, text 2 has really wonderful long purport by Bhaktivedanta. I recommend you read it. I won't probably be able to get into all of it, but we'll read a little bit more here. But actually, okay, so it is always active. So we're always active. Consciousness. We're active. We have to do things. We do have to do things. And our ultimate doing of things is the devotional service to Krishna. That is our Sanatana Dharma, our eternal function. If it is eternal, then it is eternally active, and its activities in the spiritual world are the most confidential part of spiritual knowledge. These activities of the spirit soul are therefore indicated here as constituting the king of all knowledge, the most confidential part of all knowledge. This knowledge is the purest form of all activities as explained in the Vedic literature. In the Padma Purana, man's sinful activities have been analyzed and are shown to be the result of sin after sin. So the karmic reaction of our activities in the material world for our own enjoyment. Those who are engaged in fruitive activities are entangled in different stages and forms of sinful reaction. So that's the karma. There's 2 chapters in 3 and 5 in this Bhagavad Gita. If you want to learn more about karma, karma of course means action. It's an activity that you do, and it's more than just like if what you do is what you get kind of thing. You know, people have an idea of what it's karma. You're going to get some karma. You know, it's a very deep and sort of, but basically is the living entity's activities within the material world. And so there are subdivisions of how a living entity will actually practice if he's doing activities that are, as Arjuna was bringing up the point before, of sanctioned religious activities by the Vedas that help elevate the living entity. And then there are activities in devotional service, which are actually occur, no reactions of karma. It's called karma yoga. And there are forbidden activities, which is the bad stuff we do that are not supposed to be, that people have a reaction. So as Jesus Christ said, as you sow, so shall you reap. So how you act in the material world, whether it's going to be for your own pleasure or whether it's going to be for Krishna's pleasure, that will determine what and how you get. So that's a very big topic. Maybe we'll bring up another point. Thank you very much. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Shri Krishna. And let's chant a little bit to end the night. Thank you very much. Haribo, Nitago, Nitago, Haribo, 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 Nitago, Nitago. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Haribo, Nitago, Nitago, Haribo, Haribo, Nitago, Nitago. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening tonight and chant Krishna's names.